Push your button. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular virtual meeting for February 15th, 2022. I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that you either mute or turn off your other electronic devices. And if you remember, you can also mute while not speaking to improve the quality of the sound. Rob, could you do a roll call attendance for us?
Certainly. Trustee Apatow.
Here.
Trustee Dearborn.
Here.
Trustee Kripe.
Here.
Trustee Dahlman.
Here.
Trustee Mancini.
Here.
Trustee Swerk.
There he is.
There he is. And President Rentz.
Here. Okay. Next order of business, flag, please. Is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead us tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks, guys. All right, quorum check, Rob.
Certainly. The month of March, meetings the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th. Are there any conflicts?
Rob, I will not be there on the 1st.
Thank you.
I will not either.
Okay. That was Trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
Okay.
And the 15th, I will not be in town.
Okay. Trustee Swerk, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, item 4 is public comment. This is the time of the evening where members of the audience can share their thoughts with Village Council on items that are not currently shown on the agenda. And this is also the time when Kristen gets to read any emails that may have received, we may have received in public comment.
So President Rentz, there were no emails submitted for public comment in advance of the meeting. Additionally, I can confirm there are no members of the public present at Village Hall and council chambers. We do have members of the public in attendance on the Zoom platform. So at this time, if you would like to speak on something not on the agenda, please raise your hand. I do see one hand raised. Liz, I'm gonna allow you to talk and ask you to unmute, please.
Thank you. I think I did that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
People are smiling. I'll take that as yes. Hi, everyone. I'm here to present later, but as I often do, I like taking advantage of the opportunity to make a public comment. And I want to say that I've really been enjoying the directional signs that have been placed around town. I've been driving my kids to and from school more than usual. And even my kids are noticing and commenting on them, coming back from the Northfield campus, driving through Winnetka. They're really lovely. And I just want to say thank you. I think they're really great. And they're clearly making an impact. Even the teenagers are noticing and commenting on them. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz. Anyone else, Kristen?
There are no additional hands raised, President Rentz.
Okay, then seeing none, I will, hold on here. Close the public comment session and we'll move on to reports. Does any trustee have a report for this evening? Seeing none, I'll turn to the village attorney. Any report, Peter? Okay. Village manager, any report, Rob?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
And village president, I have no report for this evening. Okay, item 6 is the approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
Moved. So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Kripe.
Yes.
Trustee Swerk.
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Trustee Mancini.
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
That motion carries. Item 7 is the consent agenda, and I will ask the village clerk to read the items on the agenda.
Thank you. Approval of Village Council minutes for February 1st, 2022, special closed session. and February 1st, 2022 regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated January 25th, 2022 through February 7th, 2022 in the amount of $1,262,007.23. Resolution number R16, 2022, license agreement to allow the installation of temporary outdoor structures. Resolution number R27, Parkway tree planting contract. Resolutions number R28, 2022 and R29, 2022, establishing manager and department head salaries. Resolution number R30, 2022, waiving bidding and approving an agreement with GovTemps USA LLC for temporary staffing services. And that concludes the consent agenda.
Okay, thanks, Rob. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Now we roll up our sleeves. Item number 8, ordinances and resolutions. The first item is ordinance number M4 2022, 455 Linden Street, variations and certificates of appropriateness. This is up for introduction this evening. The applicant is requesting zoning relief allowing for the construction of a 4-unit multifamily residential building with below-grade structured parking. Tonight, council is scheduled to consider only introduction of ordinance number M4 2022. And Community Development Director David Schoen is here to review. David, take it away.
Yes, good evening, President Rentz and trustees. I'll run through a quick presentation to summarize the project. The property is located on the northeast corner of Linden and Cherry Streets. The property is just under 10,000 square feet in size. As you can see on the left, along Linden Street to the north, there are multifamily developments as well as the public library. And to the east of the subject property along Cherry Street, there's a duplex and some multifamily units. And then across both Linden and Cherry Streets at the intersection are single-family residential homes. The property is zoned B1 multifamily residential, which does allow multifamily housing at the density that the applicant is proposing. We have included some images of the site in your materials. In terms of the development itself, the proposed development, as President Rentz indicated, would consist of 4 units, 2 on each level. Each unit would be nearly 1,700 square feet. There would be 10 enclosed surface parking spaces that would be accessed by a driveway. I should say, meant to say subsurface parking spaces, accessed by a driveway off of Cherry Street, generally in the location of the existing driveway. The site plan is shown here for the site. In yellow, you will see those portions of the below grade structure that project beyond the upper story walls. To the north, that's about 11.5 feet that it projects, and to the south is about 3.25 feet. The area to the south will be covered by lawn, and the area to the north will be a terrace. And along the north edge of that terrace will be raised planters. Oops. The site will be designed to meet all village stormwater detention and drainage requirements, including providing detention for the maximum impermeable surface on the lot, which is 60% lot coverage. This image shows the basement floor plan, and outlined in red, again, are those areas of the basement that will project to the north and south beyond the upper story walls. This image is of the first floor plan. And here you can see where the proposed terrace will be above the lower parking area. The second floor plan in terms of layout of the units is nearly identical to the first floor plan. We've included in the materials the elevations. This is the north elevation along this is the south building elevation, I should say, along Cherry Street. Here's the west building elevation that you would see from Linden. This is a rendering looking at the development from the southeast to the northwest. This would be on Cherry. And then this is the north building elevation. All three of the requested variations relate to the subsurface structured parking area. All above surface portions of the building meet all setback requirements. However, the corner side yard along Cherry needs a variation for those portions of the subsurface parking area, as well as along the north property line, those portions that project beyond the building wall. The maximum roof lot coverage also applies to those portions of the structure, though even subsurface, those are included in the roof lot coverage calculations. The design review board reviewed the design of the project at 3 different meetings. Starting in September of last year, they reviewed the building with the design in the upper left. They had concerns about the design of the roof and the overall building design fitting into the character of the neighborhood and the village as a whole. The applicant then took that feedback and revised the design. And then in October, the board reviewed the design in the upper right. The board continued to have concerns. They had concerns about the window organization, the mass and context of the north building elevation as it relates to the neighboring properties. I should say those elevations are included in your materials from previous projects. They also had concerns about the mass of the building encroaching on homes facing Linden, and they had concern about the window placement on the south elevation along Cherry. The applicant then took those comments, came back to the design review board in December with revised plans. The only concern the DRB expressed at that meeting had to do with a red brick accent that had been selected for the Cherry Street facade. And I'm sorry, at that point it was a light sandstone color. It had previously been a red color. And the board asked that it be a dark charcoal gray color, which the applicant agreed to and is included in the set of plans you have before you. Throughout the process, there were a few members of the public that did comment in writing and at the meetings. You have those comments in your materials. As I mentioned, the design review board reviewed it and in the end recommended approval of the design that was presented in November. And then in January of this year, the requests for the variations were presented to the Zoning Board of Appeals. The board reviewed the request. Given the request was for the subsurface portions of the structure, they found that the request met the standards for granting a variation and unanimously recommended approval. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions now, or if you'd like to hear from the applicant, I can answer questions after you hear from the applicant.
Why don't we go ahead and ask David his questions first? No deliberation at this point, guys, but let's just, we got technical questions about what David presented. Let's get those out now. We'll let the applicant do a short presentation. I think we can all read what's in the packet, so we don't have to go over that ad nauseum, but would like to hear from the applicant. And then we can open it up for general questions to the applicant and to Dave. And again, if David has to fill in on that, we'll go that way as well. We'll then after that, we'll ask for comments from the public, and then we can deliberate. So at this point, any questions for David? Sorry, go ahead, Kim.
I was muted. Hey, David, thanks for presenting. I saw a couple questions from related to trees and some impact on some large, was it oaks, possibly to the north? What was Andrew's thought on those trees?
Yes, Andrew did take a look at it, and he thought the trees were far enough away that they wouldn't be negatively impacted.
Oh, great. And then what is the finishing of the building as a whole besides the sandstone part?
It's a wood siding that will be painted white.
White, okay.
Yep.
Cool, thanks.
Mhm.
Rob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just trying to understand, is this applicant, is this the Linden Winnetka LL, who's the applicant, who's the builder, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to make sure that I'm clear. And have they done stuff in Winnetka before?
They have not done stuff in Winnetka before, but I'll let them speak to their qualifications.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, David, you talked about the variance requested for the roof coverage. And I think you said that it's mainly because the underground structure, even though there's not above ground structure, accounts toward that coverage. Is that what you said?
Correct, yes.
And so what is the coverage for the actual building that's coming out of the ground?
In terms of the roof lot coverage,
Yes. I mean, is that within
so
3,980.72 square feet?
So if it wasn't if they weren't projecting beyond, they would be under roof lot coverage by a couple of 100 feet. Does that answer your question?
So they'd be at 3,700 or something like that.
Yeah,
square
they
feet.
would be under what would be the maximum allowed.
Okay. Okay.
Others?
Do we have a height of this building? Do we know what the height is?
The height of the building, just
I was looking for that.
We can come back to it, Chris, if you want.
okay.
Tina?
Yeah, for the property to the east, it looked like there's some trees and I know the driveway currently looks like on an angle. Is there any proposal to do some landscape buffering to enhance? I know, that boundary between the proposed site and the duplex, I think it is to the east. Looks like if they're gonna do some site improvements, it would be, maybe nice to, spruce up that area a little bit.
There are no plans for landscaping along there. There would need to be, the driveway is along there, and there's a very small space between the driveway and the east property line. So there
Is
would
it
be
about, was it about 3 feet
no,
or is it less than that?
it's
Do you know?
less than 3 feet.
Okay, I was having a hard time. That's fine, and I'm sure the applicant can address that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And these are, sorry, these are walk-ups? No elevator?
There is an elevator.
There's an elevator, Rob.
Oh, I'm looking at this. Okay, I got it. Okay.
Andy,
David,
you're gonna jump in, it looks like.
yeah, maybe this is something the applicant can talk me through. I'm having a hard time understanding one of the elevations. Is there a number on this thing? So from most of the renderings, it looks like a fairly straightforward sort of two-story with a pitched roof structure, but in one of the elevations, it kind of looks like there's some blocks shaped brick buildings behind it.
Yeah,
What is this?
No, you're not. There's no page number on that page of the agenda either, Andy, so I'll try to.
Yeah, is that another, what is that? I can't figure out what's going on.
That's the gable facing the other way.
Yeah, it's the side gable
Okay.
from Linden.
Oh, you know what? It looked like there were windows, but in fact, maybe those are like, that's just yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Okay.
If you look at the page before that, Andy, you'll
Yes.
see the roof plan and that kind of.
Yeah, okay. The building is as straightforward, in other words, as it appears in most of the pictures, right? Good. Okay. That was my question.
Okay, not seeing anybody else jumping. Kristen, could you please promote the applicant to join us?
Yes, I will.
Hello,
Hi.
how are you? My name is Eamon Khalil. Very happy to be here at this meeting with you all. I just wanted to also introduce our attorney, Matt Holmes. He's on as well in case we have some questions beyond my ability. Anyway, I am the representative for Linden Winnetka LLC, which is the owner of the project in question. It is an affiliate of Icon Capital LLC. We are a Chicago-based real estate investment and management firm, and we currently own and manage approximately 800 units across the Chicagoland metro area, as well as some in Florida and Wisconsin. In terms of, I believe one of the questions was our other pertinent experience. We have developed either full gut job rehab of an existing structure or new construction, approximately 6 or 7 projects across the city in the last 2 years, 3 years, for approximately 180 odd units, and a couple of warehouses that we converted to lofts for 50,000 square feet, give or take. So we've been in the business 25, 30 years and are as experienced as we can get at this tender age.
do we have addresses for the developments that you've created in Chicago? Do we have that? Does David, do you have that?
I don't know if we submitted those, but we can submit them now.
Yeah, I'd love that if you could. And is this your first foray into the suburbs, or are we the first?
No. Actually, we're in the process of developing the Wilmette Masonic Lodge at 1010 Central near downtown Wilmette into 16 dwelling units. We started that about a year ago, hoping to deliver finished apartments for lease in second quarter. If we're lucky, May, June. We've also done projects in Merrillville, Indiana, Daytona, Florida, and Oak Park, Evanston.
All rental, or
yes, yes,
okay,
no, all rental. We've done the occasional condo project in the past, but we tend to be a rental oriented firm.
Okay, thank you. Chris, you're muted.
Eamon, it looks like you got off easy here. Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
Oh,
If I could ask, What has been your interaction with the neighbors? We have a number of letters over the past 6, 7 months here objecting to certain parts of this project. Has there been a community get together? Have you met with the neighbors, talked to the neighbors? This is a big change for their neighborhood. And I understand why they would be concerned in certain respects. Has there been some dialogue?
Amen. Can I answer that one? Would you mind?
Yes, of course.
Okay. The neighbors were very involved at the design review board stage. And we worked really hard to address their concerns. We modified, in particular, the patio area on the north of the property substantially. We actually removed it completely and put it all underground. And then we modified it again to kind of address the aesthetic issues that were raised by the neighbors. And while we haven't had a separate community meeting, the neighbors have been extremely involved at both the DRB and Plan Commission. And I think we have addressed, we worked really hard to address the comments of the adjacent property owners as they arose, going through those processes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that in the 3 DRB meetings, the board was very involved, incorporating, not only their comments, but also the neighbors' comments for what, for what could be improved and was improved.
And I give you credit in working with the DRB, and I'm glad the DRB was so vigilant and overseeing this. So I think they did their work. However, having said that, there are letters that came in January regarding the zoning board process, fairly extensive concerns. And again, I think these are immediate neighbors. And so I really understand where they're coming from. And has there been any effort to address some of their concerns on this?
I think
they're on page 190, 191 of the packet.
I would say that other than reducing the project in half, I don't know that we could have addressed additional concerns.
We addressed the issues with respect to the aesthetics that were raised by the neighbors. We've addressed issues related to why the project was designed the way it was with respect to traffic as by the neighbors. And we modified the roof to the extent we could to increase light to the northern neighbors. We didn't receive any objections to the project from the neighbors to the east. The only objections that we received were from the people that live in the apartments immediately to the north and from some of the townhomes across the street. That's where the project has come from. And primarily the issues raised have been with the aesthetics of the project. We've done what we could to modify it to accommodate the comments that they've brought forward. The other issues have been related to the trees, but as you heard earlier, we don't believe we're going to have any negative impact on the significant trees on the property. And specifically, the bulk of the significant trees on the property are located on the western property line, and the project is specifically designed not to have any impact on those trees.
Hey, David, can you explain, I saw the other concern that wasn't brought up just now was about groundwater seepage. David, could you go over again what's being done for stormwater and drainage for them?
So the applicant will have to submit a stormwater or an engineering plan showing that they comply with all of our stormwater requirements. They have indicated to date that they plan to provide detention, some form underground in pipes or a vault. They would have to drain the property accordingly so that it doesn't negatively impact the adjacent properties. And they have said that they plan to they plan to comply with all of our stormwater requirements.
Thanks.
So I have a question. Looking at the kind of the area, and this is more of a question for the applicant who's probably done some preliminary engineering. Do you think you're going to have to put some detention or catch basins or something underground to handle some of the stormwater?
Yes.
Okay. And would that be located in that western boundary?
It would
or
be,
Western part of the site?
I believe that's a better question for our architect and engineer, who I don't believe are on the call. Eamon, do we have Chris with us?
No, we don't. He couldn't
Okay.
join us today, but we have engaged all of the engineers that we would need for the typical construction project of this size, as well as all of the detention, the civil engineers for the water detention program and whatever else we would need to hit all of the requirements.
Absolutely. And we're very conscious of keeping the western part of the property kind of as pretty as it is. Its curb appeal right now has a lot to do with the fact that there's a large oak and some other pretty good trees along that side of the property. So we don't want to damage those with our detention methods. So.
Got it. And then maybe could you talk a little bit, it's hard to see the detail for the landscaping along, it looks like around the patio. Can you talk about what that's going to look like?
I think the architect would be better at it, but what we did was install a patio that had basically like a row along the edge that would allow for plantings that would be substantial. We haven't actually designed what it would be yet. It's kind of going to be a function of what will survive in there seasonally. I forget the actual depth of the planters that are around the edge of the patio, but they were designed by the architect specifically to increase the aesthetic and provide some screening for the adjacent property owners to the north.
Yeah, because I think some of those January letters that Bob referenced still talked about people looking from their kitchens and those, I think those northern townhomes right into the building. And so obviously doing something to help buffer that would be, you know.
And again, that's why we put that back in there. We had taken it out because they had complained that they didn't want the patio that close to their property line. And then when we took it out, that was the second meeting. They wanted us to put it right back in and make sure that we had enough kind of green in there that it would, you know, obscure some of the building from.
Right,
Yeah.
right. A bit of a green screen, so to speak.
Yeah, I think having a little bit more detail in the landscaping would be helpful.
Sure.
You know, we're just not there yet on that, because that would be part of the full construction set of documents, and so we're almost there. But you know, we're happy to, as I said, to come to make sure that any of the requirements that we've agreed to will be met.
And then my last question, sorry, Rob, I see you.
Okay, all good.
What's your target price points for these rentals?
Right now, we're anywhere between 5,000 and 5,500 per month.
Okay.
I was following up, Eamon. The reason I'd asked you about where you had other properties is because as these are going to be rentals, I assume your association has there'll be maintenance and upkeep and things like that. So I was just looking for track record because you're new here. You're not new in the city, but I just wanted to see.
No, I understand.
It's a very visible part of Winnetka. And I just want to make sure that in 5 years, 10 years, if you're still doing this, we know who we're dealing with and what their track record has been over the last 15 years of upkeep.
No, I appreciate the question. All I can tell you, you know, and I think I hope it hits home, is that we own and manage all of our own properties. We have tried various other third-party management firms occasionally, never been happy. And frankly, anybody that does what we do, we think nobody cares about our buildings like we do. So all I can say is that we'll be there if there's any problems, and it'll be myself or my wife possibly, but we'll be there and we fix it. We have to, you know, whatever we have to do, we do.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could just at this moment, Trustee Dearborn, the building is 32 feet tall.
Thank you, David.
I think Mr. Rentz is speaking, but I don't know.
Chris,
if
you're muted.
Kristen, can we turn to the studio audience and see if anybody would like to speak on this issue?
Yes, President Rents, if you're in the audience and you'd like to comment on this issue, would you please raise your hand using the Zoom platform? No hands are raised, President Rents.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, let's bring it back, and now you guys can have at it. Share your thoughts, your positions, your willingness or not willingness to support this this particular ordinance. Feel free, anybody, to jump in and start it off. I will say, actually, I'll start it off, but it has nothing to do with the building. Actually, some of it does. I wish the architect was here, because that's an important part of this conversation, especially if there are issues or modifications that we would like to potentially see. It's important to have the design professional at the meeting. So any questions we have on design, since this is introduction only, obviously we'll have to get answers back. Landscaping is another one. But I think not having the design professional here is tough, because I've got several concerns about the building elevations that I think he might be able to answer and do it well. But some of the architectural features of the building aren't really clear from what we've got here in this package. And I know that they're shrunk down from larger documents, but simple things that make a home look like it belongs here more. I can't tell whether they're there or not. A good example is if you look at the elevations where they show windows, I can't tell whether these are framed out in a brick mold or if they're framed out with some sort of, wood trim or casing around the exterior to break it up. Right now, it looks like the siding just runs into and ends right at the windows. And I know it's a sleek, modern look, but given the location and the community, those are the little architectural details that make a big difference. Okay, I understand that the building is going to be white, which is, I think, fine, no problems with that. But I definitely am concerned about the way these things look like punch windows, is how we refer to them in the commercial construction business, rather than something that's framed out and becomes an architectural element. I'm glad to hear you mentioned your engagement with the neighbors. Obviously, nobody showed up tonight, nor did we receive any additional correspondence on this. So I suppose that's good. And that was it. So if you can get, or Eamon, do you know how these windows are going to be treated as far as on the exterior elevations?
They will be framed out. It's just that we at the final DRB meeting, we had a full board of sample window, sample framing, sample material, roof shingle, all that. We just didn't think we would need it again today, and we're sorry for not thinking of it.
Hey, future reference, we're the ones that matter here, because
you know what? Good point. And we definitely understand that, but we will, in terms of the landscaping, we will come back with more detail, because we understand the concern, and frankly, you're talking to somebody who doesn't like to get rid of anything green as it is, unless there's just no other choice. So the landscaping will be more than adequate, but we will give you those details, because I understand where you're coming from, President Rents.
Thanks.
And I think if you look at your board packet, I think you can kind of see that the windows are framed out. If you go to the actual design drawings, like page A202 or A203, it shows that it just doesn't run into it. And it was actually something that we discussed,
Right.
Well, that's fine. It isn't apparent by what we're looking at here. And because there's different iterations that look different, you're not sure which one you should pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the design drawings, which are probably better than because the elevations are kind of small, at least even on the screen that I'm looking at. I'm looking at your agenda packet on the web too. It does look like they're kind of smaller. I had to zoom in to see what I was looking at.
Yeah,
but
The designs, I think, are a little more clear with respect to.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, and just a final comment. I can assure you that we wouldn't have done that anyway. And I can also assure you that the DRB wouldn't have let that happen anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you're in good hands.
Thank you.
We're
All
very
right, guys, it's up to you. Go ahead and have at it.
I'll jump in.
Please.
I think it looks nice. I'm excited to see another option for housing in the village. And like Chris, I'll be interested in hearing a little bit more about some of the design elements, just making sure we're comfortable with that. But I agree, Eamon. We do have a very good DRB. They're very diligent. That's very apparent from looking at the notes. They spend a lot of time and attention looking at those details, and probably no one would want to live in a building designed by me anyway, so I would largely defer to them. It looks nice to me, not an architect. I'm not a professional like some on this board are, but really, I think it shows a thoughtful approach, and I appreciate that. And I'm glad to see you moving into the village, and hopefully this is a sign of good things to come. So yeah, thank you. Like I said, feel largely positive about it. Do look forward to hearing a little bit more about some of those design details, but I feel like we're in good hands.
Of course, thank you.
John,
Yeah, I have no problem with the project. It obviously made its way through the zoning and obviously the DRB, like Amen mentioned. And if people on the board have some issues with someone or just need more clarity on landscape and whatever, hopefully you can bring that up at the next meeting. But I really don't see any problem with adoption tonight if we can go through that process. Thanks.
super. Thanks, John. And Rob?
Yeah, I kind of know where you are, Chris. I think the devil is going to be in the details. I appreciate you guys, doing the iterations that you have done, because the first one, as I look at it, looked like was the architect was who designed the Brady Bunch house in so and that just is you listen, because that would be worrisome to me, is really something that gets our village, takes the time to understand the architecture, the kind of materials that we hope you're going to use. And to me, it is materials. It can either look really plain or it can look substantial. So I'm just waiting to see where it's going to go, what the details look like. But I appreciate you guys listening and trying to adapt your design to the community.
David, was this meeting, I assume this topic was noticed to everyone within 250 feet or whatever?
Well, we notice.
You notice this kind of agenda item to the neighbors?
We notice at the zoning board and at the design review board.
But not at this board, not at this meeting?
No, we do not notice there's no notice requirement when it goes to the village council.
Okay, well, that's bothersome to me, I will tell you that. That's the process, but I sort of, if this building goes up, it goes up, but I kind of feel like it's been a hard slog. And again, I admire the work with the DRB. I have great respect for the DRB, of course. I feel like, right up until middle of January, neighbors were still writing letters concerned about this. And I have real concern about how the neighborhood and the neighbors are impacted by this. I feel like, to Chris's point and the others, that some of the material in here, it's really hard to see what the end product's going to be like. It would have been nice to have the architect here to talk more about landscaping. And quite honestly, I'd like to hear from some of these neighbors and know if they are still concerned about this. They may not even know this is on the agenda tonight. I mean, we're in COVID and we're virtual. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's a good end right now to me, but that's just my view as it relates to neighbors.
What say you, David?
So what I would say, we do not send a notice like we do as required by code for the design review and the ZBA. At each body, It's in the staff report and noted that those two bodies are only advisory bodies and that it would need to move forward to the village council, that the village council will give ultimate approval. And we, as staff, have not heard from any members of the public since the ZBA meeting regarding the project.
Okay, if I can add, I don't have the letter right in front of me. I know one of the letters of one of the neighbors, was stated not ideal that this application is going through, but did understand that that property is zoned what it is. And there was in that one of the letters. I'm not sure it was every letter, but that is one of them I happened to read. And, they understand that the zoning is what it is. And quite honestly, it's not an enormous structure. And as far as the white architecture, there's some big white homes being built that are pretty similar to what this looks like probably. So hopefully it helps, Bob. And I know the normal process, the public hearings are the DRB and the zoning.
Yeah, well,
And it doesn't get noticed as a public meeting to the village council.
I think I hear what you're saying on that, John, and
Yeah.
that is the process. I get it, but you know how if you're a common neighbor, common resident of Winnetka, you don't necessarily, know that this is on the agenda tonight. This is coming into your neighborhood. I'm not here to hold it up. It looks like the votes are there and so on. But I would hope that between introduction and adoption, that those neighbors are in some way informed, and whether it's a call, a follow-up, to people that have written letters or whatever, just to let them know that this is, being voted on for final approval.
Yeah.
Because the average Winnetkan is not necessarily knowing what's on our agenda and how it all works.
I think that's a good idea, Bob. We can
Yeah.
it's easy enough for somebody in David's department just to send out a
Right.
email saying council's gonna be viewing this for potential final approval on whatever the date is, and then we hear from them, and if we don't, we don't.
Right.
So
Um,
others,
yeah.
go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I land somewhere between Bob and Andy and John. A lot of those letters were from other multi-use family residents, so they did know that it was zoned this way. They live in a similar structure. It was probably nicer for them to have more of a single-family home look. I know it wasn't a single-family home that was there originally. But I think they've addressed the concerns that they have, and they're related to the trees, to the seepage, to the stormwater, et cetera. And as far as the materials are concerned, they have these QR codes, if you guys want to see them on here. Marvin windows, they show the siding, they show the brick, et cetera. So it gives you some more details there, but obviously answers from the architect would be more impactful. So that said, I would vote to move forward. But I recognize the concerns of the neighbors and think David sending a note for a notice would be a good option.
Tina, you got any other thoughts?
Sorry, I'm slow on the mute thing. Yeah, it's always hard, right? Especially when a property is zoned for the use that it comes in with. We know that this is going to be consistent, probably where the comprehensive plan ends up, right? That we know we need a variety of housing type in the village, and where to put it. And it's always hard. And so I'm very sympathetic to the neighbors. I do wish the architect was here, to talk a little bit about, kind of the design questions and landscaping. But I also think that, and I really appreciate the evolution of the design as everybody has talked about. I thought when I first saw the first design, it looked like a 1970s Lake Tahoe ski chalet. And it was just, that's going to leak snow and ice and all that stuff. So I think the design, althougalthough I think it's a modern farmhouse, maybe is what we would call it, probably not my aesthetic. I think it is, for a 4-unit building, probably is the best that we can do to kind of integrate it into a single family, area across the streets. So, you know, I don't have any objection to moving forward and look forward to hearing from the architect, but I do recognize that these are just part of the problems. You know, when you buy a house and across the street, it's zoned for a higher density use, you know, eventually it's probably going to change. And that's just really tough. And I understand that. So.
Yeah.
You know, Chris, if I can just say one more thing on this. And again, I hope that come adoption, that we have the architect there and the neighbors have been noticed and they're either happy or they express their views or whatever. But I think in reflecting on the one that we recently reviewed on Green Bay Road, the Walden, that whole process, just with the communication with the neighbors, sort of the adjustments, the berming that was made, the changes in the windows, you know, they really sort of, I think, kind of made the project fit in to everyone's satisfaction. And talking to people on Walden, they seem, you know, fine, people that I know on Walden. So this one just seems to be have been a little bumpier, maybe. And maybe it's just because I don't see all the final the end game here, but so I think that, I mean, I personally, I'll be a lone vote on this one, I think, but I hope to, you know, come adoption, that it would all come together and I'd be happy as a client, but right now I'm not very happy about it.
Okay. One thing I wanted to point out to you too, Bob, was that remember that the Walden was was done in a PD rather than just a straight zoning. And
I understand.
you remember from the first time Rick Swanson came to council and the 24 times I spoke with him between the first time we saw him and the end of the road, you know, we were all consistently reminding him that he had to deal with the neighbors. On this project, since it didn't come through there and we theoretically don't even know about it until it shows up in our packet, that we weren't able to encourage Eamon to do the same. So remember that encouragement was definitely coming from Village Council and from me to stay in contact with those people and do the best they could. So
yeah, I would agree with that, Chris. Though, I mean, I think I was kind of following this as it was going through the DRB. All the plans were available and all the iterations of it were publicized.
Yep.
So I was aware of it. I would think
You
that
called Eamon.
I would think that any developer, quite honestly, whether it's a PD or otherwise, would work with the neighbors. I mean, we're going to have others that go around town like this, and that should be sort of modus operandi. I would think when you go into a neighborhood, you should work with the neighbors.
And I would suspect that most developers would appreciate getting that sort of guidance early on in the process anyway,
Agreed.
because nobody wants to be, I mean, once you get into these stages of the drawings, it becomes a lot harder to modify and make changes. So it's something to think about as we think about process, and I'm sure we're going to see those sort of recommendations coming out in the comp plan, and hopefully council can do something about them once we understand overall impacts.
You
One
know,
other thing- Go
on
ahead.
that point, Chris, sorry to interrupt you. I think there is a difference there. And I think you're really, having members of the public or neighbors come to public hearings to voice their concerns is different than the developer outreach of a neighborhood meeting.
Mhm.
Right. And I think that's what you're grasping on. And maybe we can make that, again, this could very well come through as some of the changes that we make moving forward. But, there's plenty of jurisdictions that do require that the developer have a neighborhood meeting and outreach when there's a significant change of use. So we could easily, think about that.
Yeah, I think there's probably a sweet spot. And as long as we're talking about the future and modifications, let me get on my soapbox for just 1 minute. Sorry, guys. I have been talking about mandatory design review of single-family residential for 15 years now. And people are very worried and concerned about it. The one thing I want to point out to everybody here, and maybe those that are listening as well, that had this been a single-family home, a large single-family home, you never would have gotten any bite at this apple. And I think it shows how masterfully our design review board can help applicants navigate this, understand the community a little bit better, and respond to the context better in their design. Of course, remember that anything that's in the R whatever district, we could have been looking at that first iteration as a house in the neighborhood. So we have to, really be thinking strongly. And you saw how productive and positive. It was probably a little painful for you, Eamon, but with respect to the community, it was very productive, positive, additive, and progressive. It moved from one stage to another very rationally. The advice given was taken where it made sense, and I think it improved the building. So
No, absolutely. I mean, and pardon me for cutting in, but no, I mean, painful, maybe a little bit, but helpful. Yeah, of course. So, and it's what we do. We're used to it. We have our good days and bad days. Sometimes we're a little bit more perceptive than we are other days. I'll admit to that. And but we take help wherever we can get it. So.
Yeah,
So
and Chris, if I can just add to your, architecture review on that. So, I know there's been many discussions about making development somewhat easier or keep it fairly simple in Winnetka. So adding another review board for residential could be difficult. But as far as the project with us tonight, keep in mind, the only reason why Amen is here today is not for zoning. It's only because there's a couple of variances needed to do the project what he feels is better for the site. So he could have done a smaller building or make it fit within the guidelines and build anything on that property that neighbors may not have any input on. So I think the input that was hopefully addressed at the zoning and DRB did help out the neighbors. So that's just trying to keep it as simple as we can.
Yep, I agree. There's probably a sweet spot, and one of these days we'll have a study session about it and figure it all out. So, but that's not for tonight. All right, any other questions or comments, guys?
I hope, Eamon, that there wasn't a family member who did the first drawing that everybody's been railing on.
Okay. First of all, wait, hold on. So I believe it was, I forget which member had said that it was meant to be a ski chalet.
Yeah.
And I was about to jump in and agree until she said it was going to be leaking everywhere. Then I shut up. But
was it Mike Brady or no?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, but
checking.
the point is, no, we went for that look because we thought it had and I'll be honest, I liked the first one as much as I liked the last iteration. But then they're all my babies, so I like them all. Or what can I say? But no, we wanted something that was sort of traditional, but had a slightly different look to it, a different feel. And sometimes you swing and you miss. What can I say?
Well, love your attitude.
All right, guys.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
If we can bring this back. Oh, we didn't have any public comment, correct, Kristen? Just double check it.
There was no public comment.
Okay. Good, then I can go ahead and say,
Oh, President Rentz, as I may have spoken too soon. Previously, there was no public comment, but there's a hand raised right now.
okay, well, let's let him in. Hello, Brendan.
Yeah, hi, this is Brendan Andrew. I'm relatively new to Winnetka. This is my first village council meeting, first short time listener, first time caller, I guess. But my wife and I, we just moved. We're not in this neighborhood in particular, but I wanted to just one comment about like multifamily housing in Winnetka that, my wife and I are kind of worried coming from more urban areas is just, affordability. And I don't know, I just wanted to, nobody mentioned it except for the one question about cost, but to me, $5,000 to $5,500 rent for a multifamily, is still pretty steep. So I don't know if there's any, maybe this is more for other developments, but just wanted to put a plug in for, the village to do what they can to bring more affordable options for young families, especially because, it's not easy to get into the village for folks with young kids.
Well, welcome to the village, first of all, Brendan, and hopefully you'll continue to attend the meetings and join us in future conversations. And thanks for your perspective this evening.
Any other comments? No additional comments, President Renz.
Great. All right, I'm going to move forward and ask for a motion to introduce ordinance number M4 2022.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
yes.
trustee Dearborn,
No.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Apatow.
You're muted, Rob.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you. Moving forward, and Eamon, hopefully you'll bring your architect along next time, and David will talk to you about some of the other little bits and pieces.
We will follow up and I'll bring him by hook or crook. He'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, see you later.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is resolution number R8 2022, approving an endorsement of the 2021 Climate Action Plan for the Chicago region. The Climate Action Plan is a multi-jurisdictional approach to addressing climate crisis and proactively working on improving our environment. Public Works analyst Diana Puga is here tonight to review. And where's Diana?
You promoted Diana. She's joining us, President Renz.
You might as well promote Liz too. I understand she's going to be presenting as well.
Yes, and Chuck is here as well, so I'll promote him as well.
Okay. Hi, Diana.
Hi, good evening, President Renz.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that Commissioner Kunkel and Chairperson Dowding are ready to go as well.
I'm here ready.
Chuck.
Ready. Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, President Renz, Village Council, and Village Manager Bayhan. My name is Diana, and I am the Public Works Analyst as well as the Staff Liaison for the Environmental Forest and Forestry Commission, otherwise known as the EFC. And tonight, I, in collaboration with Chairperson Dowding and Commissioner Kunkel of the EFC, will be asking Village Council to consider adopting the resolution to endorse the 2021 Climate Action Plan for the Chicago region. The Climate Action Plan, also known as CAP, is a multi-jurisdictional regional approach to addressing the climate crisis and is tailored for action at the municipal level. In 2018, Council approved a resolution to adopt the Greenest Region Compact 2 framework. And in 2019, various organizations began drafting the CAP for the Chicago region, which was an expansion of the GRC2 framework. And in 2021, the CAP was finalized, and after review, the EFC formally voted to encourage Village Council to consider endorsing the CAP. Present again are Chairperson Dowding and Commissioner Kunkel, who will now continue with the presentation to provide more context on the CAP.
Thank you. Hi, Liz.
Hi, President Renz.
How you doing?
Hello. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Thanks for having us.
Commissioner Kunkel, whenever you're ready.
I am ready. So Diana's going to share her screen since she's got the hardwired capabilities. And then we'll walk through it. We just have a few slides, as Diana said, just a little context, a little history. I'm going to do the first couple slides. Chairperson Dowding will do the middle slide, and then I'll sort of wrap up, and we'll take it on for questions and comments. So ready when you are, Diana.
Commissioner Kunkel, are you able to see my screen?
No, I cannot. I see everybody still.
Oh, okay. Let me try that again.
Maybe I can just hold it up.
One
It looked just like that. Oh, there it goes, Diana.
Okay, great. One second.
There it goes.
That works.
Yeah, that'll work. You guys, can you see that okay? I can on my screen. There we go. So we'll start with the cover one real quick, Diana. I like that. Sure. It really is. I really am thinking about this from sort of how we got from the Greenest Region Compact a few years ago to this climate action plan of 2021 that we're obviously considering in 2022. So it's really a progression. Obviously, both of these documents, these frameworks, and the resolutions specifically endorsing them were put out by the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus of the Chicagoland, working in partnership with different organizations each time, but they're the main driver and lead author of each of these plans, the GRC2 and this new CAP for the Chicago region. Okay, next slide, Diana. So at base, we're here because we are hoping and recommending, the EFC is hoping and recommending that the Village Council will endorse the climate action plan for the Chicago region and adopt this resolution to show that endorsement. So this resolution, again, similar to the GRC2 resolution, it's a very simple, straightforward resolution that endorses the high level systemic goals of this regional climate action plan, which is really an updated iteration of the Greenest Region Compact 2, which the village adopted back in 2018. So this CAP, or Climate Action Plan, builds on these GRC2 objectives and strategies. And what really makes it, gives it a lot of teeth and gives it a lot of strength is that it works in concert with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Climate Resilience Toolkit. So it's really updating the framework that that Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus put together in 2018 and kind of spinning it into this current climate action plan using this toolkit. So really excitingly, this CAP was introduced, it was released on July 13th, 2021. And it's actually the first of 4 regional climate action plans that will be released in the US, all in concert with various regional organizations and working in concert with NOAA and that climate resilience toolkit. So again, personally, I'm really excited that the Chicago Midwest region was chosen as the first area for this regional climate action plan. And I think we're really lucky to have it. So we think that adopting the resolution will only help and focus Winnebago's action. It will accelerate and sharpen focus as a responsible local stakeholder and leader addressing climate change. Again, within our municipality, but also in concert with other municipalities in the region. Next slide, Diana. So a little bit of a timeline, again, to sort of show how we got from there to here. Since 2018, the GRC2 framework has in fact guided both EFC and Village Council action in prioritizing local climate risks and responses. In 2017, that's when the GRC2 was first introduced. It includes, you may recall, 10 different focus areas, 49 sustainability goals, and 450 strategies, all of which were organized into those 10 focus areas. So in 2018, I believe April 2018, the Village Council adopted the GRC2 by municipal resolution. And at that time, it directed the EFC to examine the GRC2 framework, which consisted of those 450 line item strategies. So the EFC spent about the next 12 to 14 months working through those 10 basically chapters, 10 sections of the GRC2. And reported back to Village Council in, again, I think April of 2019. And at that meeting, the Village Council agreed to prioritize 3 of the 10 focus areas in GRC2. And those 3 areas that were identified as priorities for the village are waste, water, and energy. And so again, since 2018, obviously the village has been working toward those goals. The EFC has continued to work toward those goals, as well as many other ones. We just recognize that these are 3 big ticket items for the village. And then in 2021, again, last summer, when the CAP was released, what it did was basically reorganize these focused areas based on the impact that taking actions in each one will take. And it's sort of, so it just sort of, I think, kind of shuffled them is a way to think about it, and put them in sort of a new framework, this climate action plan. And as of the time that we prepared this presentation, 27 suburban municipalities, as well as 3 or 4 what they called council of governments, could be a county government. McHenry County, I think, was one. So ultimately, roughly 30 communities adopted the climate action plan by the end of 2021, basically. And a few more have adopted it since then. So, okay, next slide, Diana. So as I mentioned, the climate action plan really updates the GRC2 framework, goals and strategies, and kind of reshuffles them into 2 really large, sort of big buckets of goals. They're mitigation goals and adaptation goals. Mitigation relates to reducing or minimizing future emissions with a goal of reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Adaptation goals involve adjusting to climate changes that are already happening. And it's an important part of the climate action plan that those adaptation goals are both persistent and equitable in their implementation. And then the bold language in these bullet points, these were little summaries that came from the climate action plan. I find them helpful, a helpful way to remember what mitigation does and what adaptation does. So mitigation is really about avoiding unmanageable emissions or circumstances in the future, trying to avoid the worst possible consequences, whereas adaptation involves managing those consequences that are already unavoidable. They're already happening. So it's adapting to what's happening while still mitigating what might happen in the future and minimizing those risks, again, both to the village as a unique entity, but also in collaboration with our region and neighboring communities. So again, similar to the GRC2, municipalities adopt this climate action plan by municipal resolution, which signals support for both regional collaboration and local efforts toward non-binding, but still motivational mitigation targets. So next slide, please, Diana, which I think, okay, so this is the slide that the Chairperson Dowding is going to talk about. I want to mention, I think it's pretty easy to see on my screen, but obviously it's pretty detailed. And if it's helpful, while this presentation is not in the agenda packet, the entire climate action plan is included in the agenda packet. And this graph appears on page 234 of the agenda packet, if that's easier for the trustees to see, because I know I want Chairperson Dowding to, we wanted Chairperson Dowding to present this slide because it does contain some specific numbers and metrics and kind of gets at the meat of what the climate action plan does. And how,
Liz,
and
we can see it, Liz. We can see it.
Okay. All right, great.
Well, how are you all? I think I can explain this graph without the numbers. At least I'm going to give it a shot here because I don't want the numbers to get in the way of the overall importance of the graph. The icons on the right describe the 3 focus areas that bubble to the top of the 10 GRC2 focus areas as a result of focusing on the climate action plan. That would be energy, mobility, and sustainable communities in terms of home heating. There are 3 principal means of by which the metropolitan region produces CO2, and they're described on the graph on the left, but I'm just going to describe them verbally first. First of all, generating utility scale electricity by burning coal. Second, driving internal combustion engine cars, trains, buses, and whatnot that are powered by petroleum products. And 3, heating our homes primarily by natural gas. So we got coal, gasoline, and natural gas are kind of the ways by which we produce CO2 in our normal course of living. Now, the total area on the graph on the left, the total colored space rather, on the graph represents the total CO2 that will be produced between now and the year 2050 in terms of, on the top, what might happen if nothing is done, and on the bottom, what if we apply and we're totally successful in these efforts. So first of all, the largest area there, that dark blue or purple, is and occupies 50% of that space, is from burning coal to produce electricity. So obviously, that's really the most important area on which to concentrate municipal and individual efforts. The second, the light blue area trending down toward the bottom represents about 25% of that space or CO2. And that's from burning gasoline, diesel power, and natural gas for the transport. And thirdly, then the orange area on the top represents about 20% of the area or CO2. And that's the result of burning natural gas for home heating. So I think that hopefully demonstrates to you why energy, mobility, and sustainable communities are really going to be the top 3 priorities going forward as we address the issues regarding climate change. So I'm going to turn this back to Liz, who will then close this presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson Dowding. So again, the CAP updates the GRC2, and we believe it should continue to guide the village in assessing climate risks and responses. One of the things that we like about this new framework, as with the GRC2, is while it provides this very helpful framework that we can use, the specifics are left up to each community. What we want to achieve, what goals are our priorities, and how we want to get there. But this helps identify some of those goals, and again, gives us some of the tools to get there. So we think it benefits Winnetka because it does help focus those resources, financial, staff, otherwise. It obviously aligns Winnetka with the other Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus communities, facilitates coordination with those communities, and obviously through the MMC and its resources, and the larger scale regional collaboration that gives us access to. So next slide, Diana. So in conclusion, the EFC recommends that the Village Council adopt the resolution to endorse the CAP. My sub bullet point that we want to be the first community in 2022 to adopt the resolution sadly is not going to happen because last week Schaumburg beat us to the punch. They were the first community in 2022 to do it, but let's be the second. So to achieve that end, the EFC asks the Village Council to adopt the resolution, and then again, as it did with the GRC2 4 years ago, then direct the EFC to examine the climate action plan and work through those goals, objectives, strategies, and the toolkit so that we can really tailor a plan that makes sense for Winnetka, looking at these reorganized and reprioritized goals that will really make the biggest impact in our community. And obviously on our end, the EFC commits to providing advice and recommendations to the Plan Commission and/or the Village Council as appropriate regarding inclusion of any of these items into the Winnetka Futures 2040 Comprehensive Plan or any other documents in which they should be included. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Liz.
you.
I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and ask Liz and Chuck and Diane, if necessary, any questions we might have. I'd like to save any deliberations or directed conversation until after we have the public comment. So any questions on the presentation from anybody here? Just jump right in.
I love this, all of this, and I know I've been sitting in on the EFC meetings, very excited for you guys to present. You guys have spent a ton of time researching this, reading through it, understanding ways to present to the Village Council, what would be impactful for us to see out of that large document, and I think you did a really nice job, so thank you for doing that. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with for strategies on how to hit the goals that they have, number one, and also number two, of how to benchmark us of where we stand today in terms of our actual footprint and how we manage to that. So would love to know your thoughts, not asking for it on the spot now, but as something to start percolating over, would be really interesting.
Liz, Chuck, you want to handle that, or?
Well, yeah, that's of course important that we be able to account for the efficacy of our actions in the town. And you know, that will require that we measure. So we're going to have to come up with ways in order to do that. So if we know our actions actually are producing results. I think the important thing to also think about in this case is that we are a small part of the overall metropolitan region, and we really can only reduce our own carbon footprint in proportion to our individual population. And therefore, our actual accomplishments may be quite modest in terms of the overall metropolitan region, but I think scaled by our population, hopefully they will be significant.
Cool. Others?
I'll say, I think what I'm excited, Kim, I'm excited too. That's what I think this document will help us achieve. We need to get those benchmarks. We need to get that baseline to start the measurement, period. You know, we've started talking about this within the EFC too. I would imagine that some sort of working group or task force will need to be created to dig into the energy, you know, action items and alternatives to really figure out what we can do differently. It's going to take some expertise that I'll be the first to admit I'm not sure we have on the EFC. So, you know, we're going to have to really get some people who understand those options and be able to work with the people in the village to figure out what our best long-term solutions are.
Others? Don't everybody talk at once.
Well,
just
Liz and Chuck,
to-
I'm
Oh, go
sorry, Kim,
ahead.
I was just going to say that at the very least, I admire the passion of this commission. I mean, you guys are all in on this, and you do your work, and you're given responsibility, and you take it and you run with it. So, you know, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Trustee Dearborn. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And I simply ditto Bob's comments, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a huge undertaking, kind of groundbreaking for the region. Huge. It's not a light document, right? So very appreciative.
I think it's 124 pages.
Right. A lot of expertise and work, and, you know, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, and I'll just say, you know, I remember when we adopted the GRC2 originally. It's a massive document. There's a lot in there, and there's a lot of thought behind all those bullet points in there. And I'm really grateful that you all are keeping it moving forward. You know, it wasn't just a one-time we're signed up for this thing, but, you know, that constant awareness and, you know, and I think we have some really exciting opportunities ahead of us. You know, I know that chart looks, you know, we'll talk more about this, but it looks like a lot, but I think we actually can make a huge impact that extends beyond our village. I think, given our involvement with IMEA and just our ability to sort of lead by example, I think we can accomplish a lot, and I'm grateful that you guys are there making it happen for us.
What do you think? A public comment time? Sound good? All right, Kristen, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Any members in the Zoom platform would like to comment, please raise your hand. No hands are raised, President Rentz.
Wow.
Mm.
Either everybody loves it or
I spoke too
like,
soon.
What? I saw, I did see a hand pop up there. Whose was that?
Terry Cross is joining us. Terry, I'm asking you to unmute, please.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I just have a question. What sort of, knowing that our electricity is 89% from coal, what impact can we have on reducing that and increasing it, the portion of it? I mean, we're just one small member of IMEA. What can we do to get them, you know, to get the whole consortium to make a bigger commitment to renewables?
That's a very good question, Terry, but I don't think we have the bandwidth or the technical knowledge to actually answer it. We have a contract with IMEA that runs through 2035. And, you know, putting it bluntly, we're kind of stuck with their policies until that point in time. Obviously, we can lobby as a member for changes in this, but clearly this coal-fired power plant that is so problematic needs to remain in operation at least through 2035 in order to return the investment made by all the communities who are members of IMEA. Rest assured, Village Council will be talking at great length this year about our options on the energy front, both from the distribution and from the generation standpoint. And hopefully you'll come along for those conversations, and maybe we'll be able to give you an actual answer.
Yeah, it does feel a little frustrating. Once you know the numbers, it makes a person feel kind of helpless.
Well, Terry, interestingly enough, there was this issue with regard to one of the 3 contributors to the energy that IMEA purchases, Vistra, who is backing out of their contract. And as I recall, Trustee Mancini read to us some information regarding the new sources of energy that IMEA will be employing. And they are from wind power and actually purchasing power generated by a nuclear power plant, which doesn't produce CO2. Now, even though the village cannot claim renewable energy credits or ZERCs from the nuclear power plant, we actually are purchasing the power from the nuclear power plant, at least from what I understand. And therefore, we've gone from maybe 10% to 30, possibly 30% of non-CO2 producing energy source from IMEA. So I think, together with the other large entity that's a member of IMEA, Naperville, I think that together we can certainly influence IMEA's future actions. Whether we can control them, of course, is much more problematic. But and I would imagine that we will probably have to hire some experts to help Brian Keyes with regard to all of this, while being really fortunate to being a member of IMEA. It will require negotiating some very challenging situations, because we are a unique member of IMEA, having our own power plant. So we have a lot of opportunities, I think. So I'm hopeful and optimistic about us being able to navigate these waters.
Yeah, that's correct. I just want to reiterate what Charles said, what Chuck said. Yes, May 31st is where they'll be switching gears to non-carbon emitting from Exelon and solar from Prairie Wolf. So I don't know what percent that equates to, but it's reducing the coal.
It's moving the dial. And
Wonderful.
The good news or bad news, depending on your perspective, is that all municipal-owned coal power plants in Illinois have to be shut down by 2045. So whether we all want to move away from coal or not is absolutely irrelevant, because the plants are getting shut down. So if we do nothing more as a village than focus on making sure that our residents have reliable power that they've come to expect, we'll get there.
Yeah. And I think we're very lucky to be part of IMEA, because having to negotiate the challenges with regard to the grid, if you weren't part of some sort of larger organization, which would be many, many, many times more difficult.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Andy said, which is reliable power, but also affordable power. And this is, we could have all the best intentions in the world, guys. And directionally, I'm with you. I mean, I got kids and grandkids in this world, and I want this directionally to go where it's going to go. But it is finding, everyone's all for the coal plants going, shutting down tomorrow until their energy prices increase and they're heating their home 3 times. And so it's really it's a big problem that we're all, I think, in tremendous unison of how we figure this out, and how we figure it out affordably, because it changes quickly when you look at the affordability and people heating their homes and paying to put gas in their car to go to work. And so It's kind of a combination in tandem we have to figure out.
And honestly, Rob, it's kind of like a pinball machine, and you're just bouncing off the bumpers. you know, if you rely too much on nuclear, well, nuclear power isn't without its significant problems to the environment too. You know, at some point in time in the future, there's going to be all that stuff underground that's going to start to negatively affect how the human beings coexist with these massive dumps where you know, used up radioactive materials end up going until who knows when. And the half-lives on those things, Liz, you know this stuff so well, but I mean, that stuff that's going to be there forever. So all of a sudden, nuclear is great because it eliminates greenhouse gases, but it's creating a whole nother problem that we can't even plumb the depths of yet. Clearly coal, there is no such thing as clean coal, but whatever. You know, wind and solar are promising, but it hasn't been put together. It hasn't been put out there on a scale where it can make the sort of difference today that we would like it to make. And it is moving the dial, but it's moving the dial slowly. And we have to understand that we're in this thing for the long haul, the generational haul, and hopefully we can make good decisions on that continuum to get us to a better place. But everybody has to remember too that, look, at the grid doesn't know whether the power is generated by coal or nuclear power or solar or wind. Once it's on the grid, it's on the grid, and it doesn't matter, at least from the standpoint, I hope you're following me on this, but we don't know what power we're buying and we don't know what power we're distributing to our neighbors. You know, over at Kim's house, she might be getting coal-fired power, I might be getting solar power because it's the grid. So we have to understand that there's limitations on our ability to impact this on a large scale basis, because there's 49 other states that are involved with this, all with varying legislation and rules to have it happen. And everybody's putting it on the grid and everybody's taking it off the grid. So, you know, we have to be realistic too about what our impact is, even at the state level. I mean, if a large proportion of the states continue to generate electricity cheaply but irresponsibly, it's going to affect all of us. So, but we can't stop trying. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Terry. Any other people?
Thanks,
out there,
everybody.
Any other people out there that want to comment, Kristen?
Any other public comments? Please raise your hand. No other hands are raised, President Rentz.
Okay, guys, it's back in your laps. Let's do a little deliberating here and see what we can come up with. How do y'all feel about taking another step forward and adopting this plan?
All for it. Seems like a good thing to do.
Agree.
I don't know. I guess directionally, of course, I'm for it. I mean, this is like motherhood and apple pie. We have something we have to do. I guess I'm looking at, if we're adopting something, I just don't know enough about the levels we're recommending, and are they realistic? Are they? I mean, this is just an aspirational, you know, vote of confidence to going green. You know, I'm all for it, but if this is something where people are to look at this council and say, why would you ever go agree to these kind of numbers and they're so unrealistic, or they're not high enough, whatever it's going to be. I just don't know enough to be able to say unequivocally, yes, this is what I'm adopting. So I'm not sure what the final purpose of this, you know, what we're trying to do here, but directionally, absolutely, of course, no question. Specifics, I'm a little less comfortable with the numbers.
Yeah, I guess as a follow-up to Rob, so we adopt this and these are all of our goals and everything. What happens if for some reason we can't meet them, or, you know, or things go crazy and we just can't do it? Is there any penalties, or what happens?
It's not binding, right?
Right.
Correct. It's not. It is absolutely aspirational. And Rob, I'm with you. I don't know. That's why I actually, again, welcome the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and NOAA giving us these toolkits and these numbers and something to work with. We could I could make up a number too. I like to think these numbers weren't made up, and they chose them for a reason, and they are reasonable. What I will say specifically about the climate action plan is that these target goals, like the emission goals that are articulated in the resolution, which is a 50% reduction, all from 2005 levels, 50% by 2030, 65% by 2040, and 80% by 2050. Those are all regional goals. So it's not that Winnetka is committing to reduce our use by that number. It's that in general, and again, we recognize we can't influence other communities. We're going to be doing what we can. We're especially unique. But what we're stating by adopting and endorsing the resolution, or adopting the resolution and endorsing the climate action plan, is that we're supporting over everybody, I mean, us and our neighboring communities working collaboratively to reduce the energy use in our region. And that we'll do what we can in Winnetka to support that.
I would feel better going with, we unequivocally want to do this directionally, and based upon the numbers that are whatever, whoever, you know, I'm sure there's multiple organizations that have their view on what reduction should be. I mean, I would vote today for directionally, this is where we want to go. On specific numbers, I am not as comfortable putting, you know, our name behind something. I just don't know. I'm not sure I'm even comparing it to.
Okay.
I hear Rob in this too, and this is something that we talked about in the EFC meetings as well, is that how do we make this, how do we actually know what we're going to do to achieve those goals, as us as a village council saying, yes, I want to hit these goals, but not knowing how realistic they are, or if we make a change or a policy, what kind of impact could that policy possibly have on our community? Is it a 2%? Is it a 25%? How will we get to these goals? So yeah, no, I hear you completely, Rob. I do like having a goal and having benchmarks. I think that's great. Quantifiable goals to me are much better than qualifiable goals, I guess you could say, or just thinking that we're doing a good job. So I think you guys are going to have your hands full trying to figure out how we benchmark ourselves and then tracking our progress.
Yeah, I think the real beauty of this document is the fact that we're adopting this document is that we're not doing it in a vacuum, that we're joining many, many, many other communities in the region to all agree to work together and, you know, tug on the rope as long and as hard as we can in our own little community to make a difference. But I think the beauty of it is it's not just us out there alone. We have, you know, the partnership of many other of our neighbors to continue these discussions and think of innovative ways we can do things on a larger basis than the village limits. So from that standpoint, that's where I get my comfort, Rob.
Yeah.
I know that it's not just us and a bunch of rules, regulations, or numbers we have to hit. It really is helping the region understand where we want to go, and then become the conversations from people like Liz and Chuck to go out there and have those conversations and figure out what we can do to do our part.
Yeah, I'm just hoping we're a little better than you as Congress. So basically, doesn't read a document.
We don't talk about national politics in this forum. So
well, I'm not trying to. I'm just saying. No. I just don't like to give blanket approvals. I mean, directionally, I would say something tonight that says directionally we believe in this, but it's just you're looking at specific goals that people, I don't know if it's real or not real, if it's baloney or not, or how it will impact pricing or of heat or whatever it's going to do to our residents.
So I'll just say on the goals, and I hear you and I agree with you. We wouldn't want to commit to something we can't do, but I also agree with Chris. I like the idea of, you know, being a part of the region and moving towards this. But I'll say the goals, when you look at the chart Chuck put up, they're not particularly aggressive, actually. They're good. And it's certainly better than nothing. But if you look like that purple line, it doesn't even hit low past 2050. And we already know there's a law in Illinois that says no coal power plants past 2045. So their goal is actually not even in line with the state of the law that we're already required to follow. So in my mind, it's just like, yeah, let's get on with the team. I'm not particularly concerned about, is there anything in those goals that is not achievable? Because like I said before, if we do nothing but make sure that we adapt to the state of the law and make sure our residents have reliable power, we'll get there. It's not even an option.
Others? Tina, Bob, John? I'm not seeing anything. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
If you think the conversation's over, I'll go ahead and ask then. We've done the public comment. All right. Let's see. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R8, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Apatow.
But of course, yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Liz and Chuck, thanks for all your hard work and your
Thank you. Yes.
mentorship for a lot of us, because this isn't the sort of thing that comes natural or easy for several of us. And your patience and your willingness to stay with us the long haul is really appreciated. So thanks a lot.
Well, thank you for your confidence in the hard work that we are about to begin.
Yes, and we feel the same way. And thank you again. We know, I mean, it's an important big picture systemic thing. I really think it will help, but we also know it's hard. It's not tangible. It's not practical. There's a lot of other stuff that we do need to deal with. This presentation obviously got rescheduled a couple times, so we appreciate you hanging with us and being willing to include this in an otherwise already really full agenda and evening and month. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, guys, you see you later. And we are going to move forward. Item C is resolution number R25, 2022. Approving an agreement with Mead Incorporated for the installation of 138 kV to 12.47 kV substation transformer for adoption. Village staff is requesting council's approval for an agreement with Mead regarding the installation of a transformer at the Northfield substation. And fresh off vacation, our Director of Water and Electric, Brian Keys, is here to tell us all about this. Hi, Brian.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction, President Rentz. So as mentioned, this is a contract award for your consideration for what I'll call the last major piece of the Northfield substation project. Over the last 3 years, I've presented several contracts with your approval to proceed. We've done fire protection, transformer firewall, switchgear installation, material purchase and installation, and a ComEd interconnection agreement. And last April, we awarded a contract for the actual physical manufacturing of the substation transformer itself with WEG. This is the last major contract, which is the physical installation services of that transformer when it arrives tentatively in May. To actually drop it in, drops probably a poor choice of words, install it gently into the substation and connect it. So staff, with the assistance of a consulting engineer, prepared a bid package that was issued in January. The scope of work in that bid includes all the labor, material, and equipment to install the physical transformer connected, including crane rental services required to offload the unit when it arrives from the manufacturer, crane rental services required to install metering on structural steel that exists in the yard, installation of additional underground conduits in the substation between 138,000 volt switches, the new transformer in the control building, installing 4 sets of 12 kV cable from the low side of the transformer to the control building to the new breakers that we just installed, and performing electrical tests after village crews terminate that cable. Lots of low voltage wiring for the control and relay controls between all the components. And finally, startup and commissioning activities between not only the transformer manufacturer, but with Commonwealth Edison as well. The bid deadline was in January on the 27th, and we received only one bid from Mead in the amount of $315,775. While that was somewhat disappointing with the market conditions, there is some silver lining to that situation, because as you may recall, Mead successfully bid against other companies and perform the work for the physical installation of our 15 kV or 12 kV breakers at the substation. So they are already familiar with our substation staff and a lot of elements in the substation itself. So both from satisfactory performance on the previous job, previous project experience with our consulting engineer, Strand Associates, we're comfortable that they have the capabilities to perform this project. Because we did do a pretty extensive outreach with making sure that 6 contractors that had substation experience knew about the project, including posting it online to DemandStar, we reached out just trying to get a sense of what was in our bid package that other people didn't want to bid. And basically the responses are summarized as one entity was booked and didn't feel that with the timing of the project and the other commitments that they had already entered into that they would have the resources to do the job. One entity cited that they would not be responsive to our original terms and conditions and viewed that they would need legal resources to negotiate a separate contract that they would be willing to accept. And another party indicated that they were planning on bidding, but then when they learned that who one of the bidders was, it was a firm that they were planning to use as a sub, so they didn't feel they could be competitive. The budget for this year, at the time we created the budget in that August timeframe of 2021, we were still in the middle of design work of this project. At the time, the engineer's estimate was $220,000. As you recall, the design we had a lengthy design period because we had some difficulties coordinating with Commonwealth Edison on some of the technical facets of the project. When that was completed at the end of the year, the scope for the probable cost was increased to $283,000. And my summation is based on the current market conditions that we're seeing in several utility areas that 315 is attributed to market conditions and a rise in material costs and labor. Unfortunately, at this time, I don't have a specific offset in the capital account that I'm providing to offset the increase of nominally $95,775 over the budget amount. I do know that at least $10,443 of the overage would be covered by IMEA and potentially more because under our agreement with them, they'll be responsible for some reimbursement of revenue metering costs associated with the new substation transformer. The rest of the capital budget has a lot of the substation project itself in it, and then the rest is new business expense associated with transformers and cables serving our commercial and new business customers throughout the year. And it's with the second month of the new fiscal year, I'm reluctant to make commitments that I can trim those budgets, including that we're also subsequently presenting information on rising costs of materials for cable and transformers. So at this point in time, I'm proposing that we would continue on in the current year in the electric fund capital budget. The budget itself will absorb the $85,000. Obviously, I will take all prudent steps to make sure the budget as whole, we can try to bring it in lower than that. And just as a check-in point, the year-end cash on hand is estimated to be at 3.2 million. So it's not like we'd be the electric utility account is going to be in a red. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but would ask that you consider approving an agreement with Mead in an amount not to exceed $315,775 for the contracted labor, material, and equipment to install the transformer and bring this project to close.
Thanks, Brian. Good job. Okay, guys, questions for Brian on this?
Yeah. Brian, where did Mead come in when they first, there were multiple bidders for the last piece of the job they did.
Mead they were the low responsive bidder, and I believe we had 3 bids at that time.
Okay.
They also were the only company in the bid process that actually, beyond that they had already been in the substation for months, they scheduled a separate meeting and brought their crane contractor out to survey the site, look at the setup, and brought additional resources out to actually look at how they would rig and that. So they did more due diligence than any of the other companies that made inquiries about the bid during the bid process.
And you were very happy with their work?
I'd say we're happy with the work. In fact, they were pretty clear about that. They understood that my control tech's name is Sam and that this was going to get done the way Sam wanted it or wasn't going to be acceptable. So they understood the expectations for it's going to get done in the manner that staff finds it to be acceptable. And we did hold them to in the last, I would say the only thing that we had a little bit of trouble was project closeout. We held 10% retention until they got the as-built drawings. And retention was successful in bringing them around to completing the as-built drawings, which were done satisfactorily.
Good. How was your time off, by the way?
My time off was very good. Thank you for asking.
Glad to hear it.
There was no water breaks where I was at.
That's good news. Others, Bob?
Brian, I'm just kind of interested in this whole process from budget to where we are today and how it might impact, other projects, where we're trying to put together numbers and inflation's kicking the cost of all this up and things are going on and so on and so forth. So of the 95,000 or so from the budget approval, from when the specs weren't fully developed and so on back in August, September to now, how much of that was just that the project evolved more complicated and so on, and how much of that was that the environment for tradesmen and so on and so forth and the cost of doing things has just gotten tighter over the last several months?
I would look at it from how this progressed at somewhere between 200, from the 220 to 283 was complexity of scope increased as we got the design to that ready to issue point. And from 283 to the 315, I think is market conditions for material and labor.
Okay, so that's darn near 10% over the last several months. That's just market conditions that we might be seeing in other projects that were, A-Lamp or whomever it might be, or Chris, when it comes to storm, whatever, it's a tight market out there.
We're going to see the utility is going to continue. And again, Nicholas, the assistant director, is going to talk about a painful situation with single phase pad mount transformers, which is a very generic product for us and what we've seen in that. And in other utility related matters, in fact, one of the facets we're working with A-Lamp right now is material availability for water main material. So we're going to face, from a utility perspective, for the foreseeable future, challenges in securing material in a timely manner. And I don't think the unit prices that we've got in the past are going to be rising at a predictable rate. It's going to be more unpredictable.
Yeah, and I think you more than any, well, you as much as any other person in Winnetka operations are sensitive and careful with your budgeting. And, we've had you come in front of us where something this, that, or the other's happened, and, you find a place to cover the overage or whatever, and you're coming to us here and saying, you don't have a spot right now. And I respect that, coming from you, because I've seen you come before and find room. So there just must not be room right now to take it from another project.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm very uncomfortable making a commitment about anything that's in the books right now with what's going on.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I can confirm what Brian's going through. And it's not just his electrical utility pieces he needs. In the last year and a half, labor and material prices, 30, 40, 50% increases. Trying to get people to even bid a project. They're very picky. If you haven't done work with them in the past year or two, they're not going to talk to you. So I understand what he's going through, and it's going to be tough.
Others? Thoughts? Questions, Brian?
Brian, with the completion of this project now, and you've always talked about like Winnetka is what, three-legged stool for power. What is the capacity of the Northfield substation with this project completed? Can it support the whole village if needed?
So on a peak summer, to kind of go back through the high level numbers, peak summer demand in round numbers is 40 megawatts. The Northfield substation currently can handle 30 megawatts. This will effectively take it to 60 megawatts. So we also can bring in 21, without the generating station, we have 12 kV tie lines to ComEd, that's 21 megawatts. And the planning model that we're operating under is that we would could potentially lose one significant import source and still carry a peak summer load. So in the model we're potentially moving to is we could have an unplanned equipment problem on, say, the other substation transformer at Northfield, still carry the village without starting generation. This makes this also, as I've said before, both publicly and with staff and with the council, is this gives you the freedom to make potentially difficult decisions on what you want to do with the power plant going forward. Before, it was part of the three-legged stool and was really to have that contingency, you needed to have it to ensure that we could get lights on a peak summer day. This gives you additional flexibility going forward on decisions on some or all of the generating units at the power plant.
No, that's super helpful. And I appreciate the long game that you've seen the whole time with this and that you've gotten us to this point. And, we just had the discussion about how do we get from point A to point B? I mean, we get there by playing the small ball and having that long-term plan like this. You put us in a great position, and it's something probably there's like 7 of us that are aware of, but all the residents should be very grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Others? Okay, Kristen, any public comment on this issue?
If you'd like to make a public comment, raise your hand. Mr. Dowding's raised his hand. Chuck, I'm going to allow you to talk and ask you to unmute, please.
Okay. Well, I'm really thankful that I stayed on to hear the rest of the village council meeting, because it allows me to thank Brian for his unfailing, excellent work for our town. I think we're very fortunate to have someone like him there guiding us through these very, very difficult decisions. I just read this book called Shorting the Grid, and I realized how really challenging his job is. I had no idea how difficult this is until I read that book. But thank you very much, Brian, for all that hard work and for, as Andy said, playing the long game here so that we can make those decisions down the road with regard to our assets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Downing.
Thanks, Chuck.
Any other comments? No other hands are raised, President Rentz.
Okay, we'll close public comment and bring it back. Any other comments, guys?
If I vote no, will Brian turn off my power?
Yes.
Just checking.
Yes, the water main. Just uses mind powers.
I can walk to your house in about 3 minutes, Rob.
Bring a flashlight.
I don't think Brian will have to, you'll have to worry about Brian shutting it off. I'll be there before he gets there. Just kidding, folks. All right, may I have a motion to adopt resolution number R26, 2022?
So move.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
And I'd like to correct that that was R25, 2022. Correct, Rob?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. Good work.
All right, moving along, we also have resolution number R26, 2022, approving a contract with Wesco for the purchase of a single-phase pad mount transformers. Due to the increased manufacturing lead times for utility-related products resulting from the pandemic, village staff is requesting authorization to purchase transformers prior to formal approval of the fiscal year 2023 budget to ensure timely delivery. And Assistant Director of Water and Electric, Nick Nari, is here to review it and explain to us what this all means. Hi, Nick.
Thank you, President Rentz, for the introduction. I appreciate it. So yeah, Brian alluded to it. As a result of the pandemic, we're seeing increasing lead times on material across both the water and electric departments. An item we've seen noted increases in in terms of lead time is single phase pad mount transformers. So transformers that were ordered in the middle of 2021 originally had shipping dates of first quarter 2022. Those dates, based on correspondence with the vendors, have since slipped to late 2022 or early 2023. So we're already seeing slippage in delivery dates. Based on these delays we were seeing from vendors, it was obvious that staff had to act. So we issued a request for bid for 8 additional units. We sent out bids to our 5 normal vendors that we normally correspond with, of which only 2 responded. The distributor Wesco Incorporated was the only vendor that was deemed responsive. They quoted transformers manufactured by ABB, which is on the village's approved list of manufacturers. Multiple manufacturers are at this point are declining to even bid based on volatility in the market. In late 2021, the vendor that normally was the responsive winning bidder for transformer bids at that point told us they would no longer be bidding on transformers. So since late 2021, they haven't even bid on any of these opportunities. So prices of these units, you can see from your materials, is approximately $12,636 per unit. Prior to the pandemic, these units routinely cost less than $3,000 per unit. So this is over a 350% increase in the price per unit, alluding to what Director Keys already mentioned. Similarly, the lead times that were being quoted now for these units is 130 weeks. In 2019, prior to the pandemic, we could expect these units to be delivered in about 12 to 14 weeks. So at this point, it's likely that any units that we order are not going to arrive until 2023 or possibly 2024. Therefore, they're not going to be reflected on the budget of the year until they arrive, which is why we're here asking you tonight. With all that being considered, in order to make sure that we have appropriate inventory to continue to provide reliable service to our residents and businesses, we are asking you to consider adopting R26-2022, approving the contract with Wesco for the purchase of transformers in the amount not to exceed $101,088. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
So I do have a question.
Sure.
Actually, I have 2 questions. One, when are we obligated to actually pay for these units?
Go ahead, Brian.
I'll do the phone a friend, President Rentz. So we're obligated to pay at the time of we receive them. So you're going to be we'll be encumbering the utilities electric account financially with a contract award. The funds don't physically go to the vendor until we take delivery of the transformers at the village yards. Actually, it'd be after we take delivery because it would show up on your warrant list 2 weeks after I take delivery of them. And then Tim would release the check following the council's approval of a warrant list. So this vote tonight, if you approve it, is we're going to be financially encumbering the account. The funds are not going to leave the village until we take delivery of the transformers and you approve the warrant, likely 2024.
In the unlikely event that the markets for these things calms and there is a reduction in, let's say, the list price over what we're negotiating today. I mean, we've all seen this where prices can soar on certain things, especially in the construction industry. And then all of a sudden you see the price drop back, maybe not to previous levels, but it does drop. And how do we arbitrage against, for that sort of event where we might be able to take advantage of price differentials that might occur in the future that are to our favor?
I'm not sure we can do an arbitrage with our standard contract language, or I'd want to do it, but I'll put Village Attorney Friedman on the spot. But I think we would be able to legally cancel the contract under our standard terms and conditions, especially if we were more than, say, 3 months out from production. And then we would have to get rebid and get back in line at a different price, whatever the market is.
Okay. Well, clearly there's an urgency to this too. Go ahead, Tina.
Well, these are the sorts of transformers, the big green boxes outside of people's houses when they like if you rebuild, you upgrade your electrical service, is that right?
Yeah, so this is taking the high voltage 7200 volt power that we distribute power at and converting it into the 120, 240 that residents get in their homes.
Yeah, and so, I mean, do you guys anticipate, I just see an increasing demand with all the electrical, vehicles, people's older houses trying to upgrade their electrical panels. Do you see potentially that there could be a cooling in the demand for these?
I think
For these units in general, I don't think so. I think what part of the reason we're seeing this tremendous spike in lead times and prices is panic buying on that behalf of investor-owned utilities. They're seeing the same market signals that we're seeing, and they have a lot more buying power than us, so they're buying up everything they possibly can.
Okay.
What is our present stock and how long do you think that'll last?
Currently, we have just shy of 8 of these transformers in inventory, and we have the 10 that are already on order that should arrive late 22, early 23. So that'll put us just shy of 20 units.
And if an individual needed one and you didn't have one, is there another market the individual might be able to go buy from or no?
No.
Sorry, Nick. So trustee Swerk, things that we're doing is there's a couple other steps. I probably should give Nick a little more opportunity before I jump in as his phone a friend, but one, we're examining refurbishing some transformers that we had previously taken out for their material condition. So we'll probably pick up 3 more units in the next 60 weeks from that effort. If we got into a pinch point where we needed a unit in an emergency, we can potentially call for mutual aid from a neighbor such as Naperville, but they're not going to not be willing to be our stocking inventory for normal new business. And they're facing the same challenge we are. But if we had a scenario where we had lights out and didn't have a transformer, we'd do mutual aid. Short term, Nicholas has been reevaluating designs where we have intentionally been trying to get more pad mount transformers on the ground to mitigate overhead or future reliance on the overhead system. We're backing off of that. And where this is going to cause us some future pinch points is with our goal to underground the electric system. This is a critical piece of being able to do that. So one, the cost to achieve that goal is going to be higher than it was 2 years ago. And if we can't get the transformers, it's not going to be on a pace that we may want to do it. It's going to be drawn out.
Yeah,
I wonder if there's going to be, if there's somebody we can go to forecast. I just can't believe unless there's 2 people that make these in the whole world, that at some point, like to Chris's point, it's not going to catch up and it'll be back somewhere near the, to normal. I just don't know the market that well. You guys may, or if we need to understand this market better, who we go to understand where future demand may lie.
I mean, we've been trying to ascertain that from the vendor community, and I guess it's really unclear how they see it because literally they're telling us they're not going to accept orders. In fact, what the rep for Wesco said, the factory that these units would come from, he's been told don't come back for another bid after this unit. They're not going to bid. So if we put out a bid again to Wesco and they go to ABB for their Jefferson City manufacturing plant, he's currently believing that Jefferson City ABB plant will not bid if we did it over again. ERMCO, which was actually the frequent low responsive bidder, is not even taking bids and not responding. So they've been non-respondent. Central, Maloney, and Cooper are manufacturers. We didn't get any bids from those companies. The one bid that was deemed non-responsive bid a transformer manufactured by Howard. The price was nearly double the ABB price, and Howard's not currently on the approved list with the Village of Winnetka for several reasons.
Is it a component shortage in addition to labor and all those other things?
So they're basically telling, what we're getting verbally from them is rising metals costs, inability to get labor to construct it, and panic buying from utilities. And to be honest, we're in that, at a microcosm of it, we're panic buying. I mean, would have never thought that we'd be asking you to buy transformers for the end of 2023 going into 2024. And if you look at what's coming down the pike is we're looking at buying a line truck that's going to be potentially 2 years out.
Amazing. So if we got in a situation where we had no transformer that we needed to replace for some service, you mentioned Naperville. I mean, is ComEd even an option? They probably have a pile of them.
Well, I mean, if we got to a point where we're doing mutual aid, and we would start with the municipal entities, and if not, we'd reach out to other parties and see who we could get a transformer from. They would not be obligated to give us one.
Right.
I mean, if they were somehow found themselves sitting on a large amount of units, then potentially they'd want to, be willing to negotiate on one.
Right. Because I'm just thinking worst case scenario, a year and a half from now, if transformer blows out and you don't have any to replace a house or a business, what happens?
Well, again,
there is another option. So the vendors that we've reached out to get these transformers reconditioned, part of their business is they also sell reconditioned transformers, used transformers essentially, which is obviously not our preferred path to go down. We prefer to have brand new units, OEM. So you do have the option of purchasing essentially used transformers off the market, but I think we want to try to avoid that, but that's another avenue that could be useful.
Right, and those would be available like now if you needed one or no?
It certainly shorter lead times, but again, it's a used unit and it's, the prices on those are not what I'd call reasonable either, so.
No, I'm just thinking worst case, this as a backup that we talked about it, that's all.
Certainly.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
I want to touch on Brian's point again about the burials. So in a normal non-COVID time, we would install approximately 10 of these units per year as part of our continued efforts to bury the system. So between 8 and 10 units were being installed per year. So essentially this is going to create almost a 1 year gap in our ability to help bury the system.
Nick, can you give me a context what that means? 8 to 10 a year out of 2,000, out of 150, how many to cover the village to be able to bury things? I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand what's the magnitude of these that have to be replaced.
So we have about 750 transformers throughout the village. I don't have the number in front of me, how many are overhead versus underground, but typically, in most cases, when we put in the pad mount and we would take down an overhead, it was usually a 1-for-1 swap.
Okay.
Trustee Apatoff, where this comes into play is we generally do nominally say around 40 new electric services a year, whether it's a revision or a new facility, commercial or residential. Most of these would be residential. To Nicholas's point is we would look for opportunities to get a pad mount transformer installed and take out a corresponding overhead transformer off the overhead system. So we're incrementally progressing toward getting out of the overhead business. What will happen is in those cases, in some cases, we will not be able to avoid putting a transformer in. We will have no choice. We'll have to do it because of the design or the electrical requirements. In some cases, we'll potentially have to leave the overhead transformer and serve that customer, continue to serve customers off the overhead system as opposed to moving to the underground electric.
But Brian and Nick, so out of 750, how many do we still have to replace? I assume, have we already done half of them, or is it we have to replace all 750, or what's left to do?
We can follow up and get a breakdown. What's left to do is what would be happen when and if the village could compel AT&T to underground, where we can start putting everything wholesale underground. So what in the short term, the focus, I think the question you might be kind of driving at in a different direction is on a given year between vehicle accidents and failures, I would expect to see 1 or 2 units fail catastrophically from some type of electrical failure or car versus transformer. Yeah. So of the 10 units that Nicholas mentioned we have in play, we can figure 2 of those are going to be maintenance related replacements. 8 of them would be slotted, the remaining 8 would be slotted toward what I call new business. So you're building a new house, that development that you just looked at may be a, you know, large single phase service. We're gonna have to put a transformer in. We're going to, in some respects, going to basically try to stave off putting a new transformer in and continue to serve some of those new business requests off the overhead, knowing that we may not have enough transformers.
Yeah. Well, I guess at that point, I would consider buying some used one, you know, to get the best of the refurbished versus everyone else who's going to get them. And so we get the worst of the refurbished. If we really believe we're going to be that tight for the next 3 to 5 years, it does make you have to think about doing that, covering yourself. So
Yeah, that's correct. And I think unfortunately, while I agree with Nick's comments, I think that a lot of the refurbished market is already snagged up. And when we're seeing that with, the quotes that Nick got for refurbishment of our units was 60 weeks. So I think we're at a point where if one would fail, we wouldn't send it to be disposed of for metals. We would be saying, how much can we get this one fixed for?
Yep. Okay.
Hey, Brian, when you mentioned the for this development, do we pass this cost on? I mean, is this a pass through to the end user?
Yeah, so this is a pass through to the end user unless it's made. And so, Nick, that was one of the things I think you're prepared to talk about. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, so there would be no change in the current structure of the 2022 rates. So anyone that between now and the end of the calendar year pays for a 200 or 400 amp service, they're not going to reflect this cost. But when it comes time to budget for 2023 and beyond, we will be taking this new cost into account for those flat rates.
So it's passed through the rates. It's not so if that development needs this transformer, do they pay us $13,000 to get it?
In the current, for a single phase installation, the rate the transformers are built into the flat rates because not every single phase customer new business request gets a transformer. So it's factored into the flat rates. In theory, when we build the flat rate, not the electric kilowatt hour rate, but the flat installation fee rate for 23, we're going to have to reflect these prices in those flat rates. And what we're going to have to do is raise those rates to recover our cost.
Right.
On a 3-phase customer, whatever the cost is for that transformer, the cable work and the utility work, that's 100% pass through at the time we put it in at that time. On the single phase, it's done through your rate resolution, and we usually attempt to do one resolution and leave the cost fixed for the year. With what the transformers that Nicholas had already ordered, we feel pretty comfortable at this point in time that the rates that we ask you to approve encompass what we believe will recover our costs for at least the first 6 or 8 months of 2023.
Can you give an average customer for 2023 of what it would have been in 2022 and what it would look like for that same customer in 2023? I just don't have a perspective of what that increase is.
It's not going to be a 1-for-1 on the price increase. It'd take a little bit of math work, but I mean, I think that's a number that we should be very easily, as we get closer to the budget cycle, be able to give you calculations on here's what it's going to cost. And that would the things we'd be looking at would be increases in, not only we're going to have increases in cable as well. But it won't be on the single phase. It would not be. So Nicholas mentioned these units were less than 4,000 and now they're over 12,000. It's not going to be a 1-to-1 price increase because we do say 40 new services. Some of those are 3-phase and not every single phase service gets a transformer. So it's going to be some number less than that, $8,000.
Right. So the origin of those flat rates is at the end of the year, we do a total cost of service for all installations and then average it out. So some do get transformers, some don't, it averages out. So it's not going to be 13,000, it'll be some number less than that, but it's definitely going to be incorporated into next year's flat rates.
You know, Brian, that new apartment building that you were just mentioning, they have an elevator, so it's probably a 3-phase service.
As soon as you said that, I'm like, yeah, you're right. You started to say that, like, yeah, it's not going to get away with a single phase service.
Yeah.
So the good news is at least you won't lose anything on that particular one, so.
And the difference between single phase and three phase is just the total electrical load from the structure. Is that the difference?
Yes, that's a short version. Yeah. So what happens, single phase is a smaller, typically a smaller size service, typically residential. If you're outside Winnetka, I'd say typically residential. We have a fair number of residential homes that have commercial services that are larger than small commercial services outside Winnetka. And that's what President Rentz is alluding to. Sheridan Road has a lot of homes that have three-phase electrical service. So our design theory is, Trustee Dahlman, is if you need more than 400 amps of single-phase service, the designer is required to go size it as a three-phase service.
I see.
The loads are balanced across 3 individual phases as opposed to a single phase.
Got it.
It's a design philosophy or requirement to ensure that the distribution system is operated efficiently and effectively.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Kicking myself for not upgrading my service in 2007.
Yeah, I'm building something in Vero, and they can't even get panels for the electric boxes, and they can't get transfer switches for generators. It's on a, I think you're right. It's a run on everything. It's like toilet paper and Lysol wipes at Costco used to be. It's now electric transformers.
Crazy. All right, let's
Try to buy steel. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have Executive session tonight, guys.
Everything.
So I gotta move this along.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and move forward on this. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R 26/2022?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
That motion carries. Good job, Nick. And
Yep.
again, Brian, welcome back.
Yep. Nick and Brian, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, item 9, old business, there is none. Item 10, new business, there is none. Item 11, appointments, I do have a couple. The first one is I would like to appoint Kim Mancini as the trustee liaison to the Plan Commission to fill what's left of John's term. Just so you guys all understand, the thinking was is I'd like Kim to step in now so there can be some continuity on the comp plan going forward since they just restarted. So with that said, may I have a motion to appoint Kim as the trustee liaison?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Second.
Roll call vote, Rob?
Yes, trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
and trustee Mancini.
Yes.
Nice to be able to appoint yourself. All right, the next one is to appoint Chris Foley to the Plan Commission to fill the unexpired term of Jay Vonderlaan. His term will expire on May 18, 2024. Chris is filling the vacancy from Jay's resignation. I thought he would make a really interesting and a solid, he isn't even an addition. He's been there all along as the liaison from EFC. I get a lot of real positive feedback on his thoughtfulness and his willingness to engage. So he seemed like a natural to fill the slot. So I'd like to have a motion to appoint Chris Foley to the Plan Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Swerk.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. That's all I have for tonight. Item 12, closed session. May I have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining pursuant to section 2C2 of the Open Meetings Act and to adjourn the open meeting automatically and immediately upon conclusion of the closed session without the conduct of any further business or comments. May I
So
have a
moved.
for that? Thank you. Second,
Second.
roll call vote?
Trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
trustee Mancini,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Okay, we're heading into closed session. Rob, go ahead and start with me if I'm not back right away.
All right, thank you.